blue plate, come on, grab your friends. We'll go and play some Tribes Ascend with Dark Matrix and Stowaway. It's gonna be great, it's behind the blue plate.
Hello there, Tribes fans, and welcome to a very special episode of Behind the Blue Plate. We're joined tonight by the one and only Todd Harris from HiRez Studios, and we'll be running with a slightly different structure tonight. But first, I'm joined as always by Stow. How you doing, Stowaway?
Yeah, man, I'm good. Looking forward to the show. It should be a good one today, and definitely not something we've specifically done before. Like we've had HiRez Kate and KP on, but this is more of a, I guess, business-related interview. And it's been a while since we've actually done Blue Plate. What, did we miss 2 weeks or 1 week?
Only 1 week.
Only 1 week. Seems like ages, man.
Well, that's what you get. So yeah, like I said, slightly different structure tonight. We're just going to be focused on sort of the interview with Todd. So we'll do all of the catch up of tournament news and all that kind of stuff on another episode. Before I introduce Todd, we've also got Yazzo here. He'll be running the chat moderation as well as sort of chat liaison, if you will. So he'll be trying to keep on top of you guys out there in Chatland if you've got any comments or questions as we go along. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. Yazzo, you did a great job with Kate and KP all those months ago.
No problems. Well, yeah, I mean, keeping on top of people in chat, that's what I'm up for. So I'll stay on top of... No, I'm going to stop talking. Just go for it. No
worries. All right, well, let's get stuck into it. Todd, thank you very, very much for joining us tonight. How's it going over there in Atlanta?
It's going pretty well. Thanks for having me. I appreciate all you guys do for the community, so happy to come on.
No, it's great to have you here. So just like I do with all the guests that we get on the show, it's great to get sort of a little bit of an introduction to yourself. So I'd like to ask you sort of how long you've been with HiRez, what your role is, and kind of what does that mean both like sort of strategically and what your day-to-day activities are.
Okay, yeah, so my name's Todd Harris, and I've been with HiRez actually since we founded the company. We started the company in February 2005, and basically it was HiRez on the forums, who was a big gamer and successful businessman, had enough money to try to start a studio. He talked with me about doing that with him. So one of the co-founders, been here since the beginning. My official title is COO, which means I do most of the stuff that no one else wants to do. My background is programming, but I haven't done that in a while. It's because HiRez is the big boss and CEO. He gets to make all the rules. And then obviously the folks on the dev team are making most of the day-to-day decisions. And again, I do whatever else is left. So that's boring business, legal stuff. Really my most important job, yes, strategy, it's going to sound cheesy, but my most important job is making sure we have really good people and trying to retain the talent that we have. And so a lot of what I've done is build the studio from 4 to our current size of 70 or so. And yeah, so that's kind of job number one. Day to day, you asked. Day to day right now, I'm pretty focused on a lot of the marketing activity, a lot of the business development activity, as well as basically our international strategy. So
cool. And what do you mean by international strategy?
Basically just how HiRez can expand our footprint even outside of the US and Europe. Okay,
cool. All right, well, let's get stuck right into the main topics of the evening. And Stowe, I'll kick it over to you to take the first few ones.
Yeah, so this we'll start off with the recent announcement that development support is going to be discontinued for Tribes Ascend, and this was something that was, I think, first mentioned in a Reddit forum kind of a Reddit forum post where you answered to the question. So here's a really simple question for, well, any HiRez employee to answer. What is the status of development on Tribes Ascend? And you basically came back to that and made your own post saying that for the next 6 months, our primary development focus is going to be SMITE, and there'll be no major development updates planned for Tribes Ascend in the next 6 months. So I suppose the first thing we can go into, kind of go onto is what caused you and HiRez, or whoever made those decisions, to kind of go into that. And one of the main, I think, aspects of that will be how do you feel about Tribes Ascend as a product? Has it been profitable for you? Have you learned quite a lot while making it? And just how do you feel overall about Tribes Ascend as a product?
Okay, so there's a lot in there. The original.
Yeah, sorry, I ran on a bit.
No, that's cool. The original Reddit post, was from me. So I definitely think the headlines that came out of that Reddit post, in my mind, were exaggerated. The demise of Ascend is not upon us in my mind. But what I wanted to clarify and really be transparent about, because it was a few months back that we, actually longer than that, probably almost a year ago, that I put a post out around embracing transparency. That was something I think we did not do a good job with early in the development. And the idea of a development blog that was keeping people up to date with what was going on, I think was a good step. Recently, we haven't had a lot going on, but we have maintained that idea that whatever was being worked on would go into the development blog. And so when the question was asked, I'm sure just looking at the history of what was in the dev blog, which wasn't much recently, and also seeing the increased things that we were doing on other fronts, I wanted to be consistent with basically that idea of transparency and just tell people where things stood. So the post is accurate in that we've had maps going on, as you guys probably know that follow this show regularly. Kate continues to work on maps. Specifically, she's got, I think it's 2 CTF and 2 arena maps that she's been working on. She's in the chat, so she can correct me if that's not right. But so that has been continued. But basically, in the next 6 months, those may or may not get deployed. And then as far as major features, because there were different expectations out there around what we might do or what we might not do, just wanted to let people know that there were not any major features planned, except for there is one that we can talk about a little later in the podcast, because I think it'll tie into some of the other discussion. So there's one thing we're planning to do, but beyond that, not a lot of activity. So that's what led to the post. Like I said, I think the demise is exaggerated in that we have still on a monthly basis. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. Certainly more than 100,000 people in the last month played the game Tribes. We have thousands coming in on a daily basis. Last weekend, we added Amazon as a vendor that wanted to put Tribes on their store. And the next month, we'll add Game UK on their digital store, which they're starting. So there's a lot of folks still interested in the game. We understand the desire for more content. And again, there's one feature that we're thinking about, which we can talk about in just a few minutes.
I mean, those numbers are quite impressive, Todd. I guess the reaction I've got to that is if, the only metric that we ever had for measuring sort of player interaction with the game was the Steam charts. And for quite a while, that's sort of been a flat line. So given the numbers you've just told us, like, why are the Steam charts flatlined the way they have?
Well, yeah, so the Steam has gone down, dramatically since launch and be flatlined. And that pattern is consistent with almost every other game on Steam outside of Valve games. You can look at other exceptionally good games, shooters or others, and if they're not Valve games, the usual pattern is they start very high and then they basically flatline at a certain level. And even with those additional channels that I mentioned and the numbers coming in, it's just the nature of the games industry that we anticipate a flat line at this point. We anticipate and certainly hope for a stable community, but not a growing community. So that drives some of our business decisions and how much resources we can put on the project. So you asked, I think, if Tribes was profitable. Tribes did make a profit. All the profits from Tribes have gone and are going directly into the game Tribes. So basically, the game SMITE drink, is growing based on the money that it's bringing in, and the game Tribes is receiving continual updates and/or community support or prizing based on the money that it's bringing in.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit deeper. I mean, obviously, with that many players, you would expect Tribes to continue making revenue. Is it sustaining itself in terms of what it costs to host your servers and all of the maintenance that goes on with that? And considering you're also giving out prize money for the different tournaments, what's the state of the the revenue that Tribes is making? Is it profitable given the overhead, or is it now a loss maker given the shrinking of the community?
No, again, it's not losing money, but the amount that we have for updates is certainly more modest at this point. So it's not losing, but we don't see it as a growth vehicle for the studio. We see it as something where it has a community that, and it will continue to have a new influx of new players will come in. Some players will leave. Hopefully a lot of players will stay with it for a long time. And again, we can talk about possible ways that we can work with the community to help make that happen. But at the end of the day, we don't see it as as a growth vehicle for us. It's more stable, but it's not losing money.
Okay. And so has the development resource that's gone into Tribes over its time been directly proportional to the revenue it's brought in? So it was the decline in development investment a direct result of the revenue generated by the game?
Yeah, I think I understand your question. I mean, at the very beginning of the cycle, we put out a lot of significant updates. I mean, the community may agree or disagree with some of the choices that that were made on the design front, but we released a game that was had a pretty good sized client or I'll say map pool and game mode pool, and then we did 10 pretty significant updates, and we probably in retrospect went out too fast with too much. We were going every month with very significant amount of new weapons, very significant number of new maps, new skins, voices. I mean, I think we added in that first set of updates 13 new art sets as far as maps, and probably that ended up being 25 playable maps with the different game modes. And if I compare that to other shooters, say a non-free-to-play shooter, the expectation of a DLC with maybe 4 maps every 6 months, that's a little more of what would be typical, or maybe a new Call of Duty every year that people would be paying $60 for. And we went with free maps, obviously selling weapons and skins, and I think the community grew to expect that level of updates, and at this point, the revenue doesn't support that degree of updates. It supports more modest updates from HiRez.
So just tying into that quickly, when you would make those updates and release, say, a couple of new guns and a map into an update, would you, as a company, see your player base go up again, and you making more money purely down to the addition of those? Were they substantial money-making patches that you were putting in?
Again, most of the patches, I would say, were they justified the cost that went into them. I mean, really, the pattern that we see with Tribes that drives a lot of the kind of the decisions is. Well, let me just give a little background on kind of our decision to get it. And I'll try not to go off too much into a tangent. But as people know, we bought the franchise mainly out of passion. It actually wasn't, I would say, a very calculated business move. It was the fact that we had built Global Agenda, so we knew how to make jetpack shootery games. At least, that was our first game. We learned something. Another jetpack shooter seemed like it was a good fit. And we were inspired by Tribes when we made Global Agenda. That was one of a few games that we were personally inspired by. So we went to try to find and see if we could get Tribes. And there were 2 guys on the team, specifically Mick, who's our technical artist, and Sean, who was the lead artist, who basically said, if we could get tribes, that meant everything to them. They'd work like crazy. They'd make the best game they could. So it was really out of passion that we picked it up. And throughout the development process, we talked actually to multiple publishers. To your question about the international strategy, we talked to different publishers to understand how broad could this game be. Are there people that could maybe help us publish it outside of the U.S. or as you know, when we first announced it, we even looked at the consoles. And we talked with all the major ones, and the feedback that we got from everyone after playing the game was the game is too hard and too different, and it's going to be hard to make it a mass market success. You'll have to really change it if you want to make it a mass market success. And we decided, again, the community, some people may think we dumbed it down or tried to make it into Call of Duty. In our eyes, we tried to keep what we thought was kind of the spirit of the franchise, but we basically said, screw it. We're not going to work with a publisher. We're going to self-publish it. It may not be huge, but we're going to try to make it as huge as possible. We're going to expose a large number of people to the gameplay. We think more people will play it and like it, and we can actually find an audience for it. And at the end of the day, I would say, we were kind of right, and also the publishers were kind of right in that a lot of people played it, but we just see, and again, you could put it on HiRez, you could put it on the community, you could put it on the nature of the game industry, but the people that are playing the game, a lot of those new people that are coming in every day, for a lot of them, they just decide the game is not for them, and they play for a shorter amount of time. And if they don't enjoy playing, they're going to spend less money, so that's less revenue for us. So, I mean, that's kind of the reality is that, and I'm not blaming from the chat. I'm not blaming the players. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just telling you the reality of the pattern that we see for folks. So that's okay with us. I mean, it just means it's a more modest, stable return, which is kind of what we thought it might end up being. But that's, the facts back that up. The number of people that play it every day, for a lot of them, they just decide for whatever reason it's not for them.
All right. Well, let's dig into that a little bit deeper. I mean, do you feel that did you achieve what you wanted to achieve with Tribes Ascend? Would you call Tribes Ascend a oops? What's going on? Oh, damn it. What do you think that Tribes Ascend is a complete game? Is it finished, or did you have to stop development early? Like, how do you feel about that?
So is it a complete game? I guess, complete, is it perfect? Definitely not. Complete, is it done? We certainly hope not. We don't think so. I guess complete in that are all the parts there to deliver a good experience? We do think so. I mean, I think I understand, and we'll talk in a bit about the user requests to be able to continue maps for the game. I completely understand that, and again, I want to talk about that, as we go, because we've got thoughts about that. But complete as far as feature set and the amount of content that people get, I think we feel that particularly when we released the Game of the Year edition, and it was a way for people to get a game with all the gameplay elements for $30 on our website, $10 right now on Steam, that most of the people I talk with at shows, I mean in person, not Reddit style interaction, most of the people say whatever they spend in Tribes, they felt like, take the number of game entertainment hours, divide it by what they spent, and they feel that while it's not perfect, it was a good value, and they kind of got their money's worth. So it's it's not complete, but I think it delivers a good experience.
Cool. And let's go back to like the development resource stuff. What was the real core reasoning for removing all development? Like there's been a lot of people saying why couldn't you leave maybe 1 or 2 devs, which hopefully wouldn't be extremely expensive just to keep the ball rolling, rather than coming out with this announcement that no, it's unfortunately dev has stopped?
Yeah, and again, that was whether it was my statement that was overly harsh or the press interpretation, I don't know. I mean, Kate was making maps. Kate's continuing to make maps. I see some amount of bug fixing that's going on. But the reality is, in the next 6 months, we have some other opportunities ahead of us, and I can't with confidence say that we'll be able to deploy those updates in the next 6 months. And so we were just being candid with that.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to go on to is something you mentioned earlier. You said in the releases and updates you did, you maybe went a bit too far on putting too much resources into that. That was what you meant, sorry, wasn't it? Earlier, you're putting too much resources maybe at the start into the updates.
Yeah, and my point with that was not. It was simply that the expectation that what people got used to at the beginning was every month a lot of maps and multiple guns. You know,
Sure.
What's more common is in a free-to-play game, a company might leak out, one gun or one piece of content, let's say every 2 weeks, right? Something to keep the community engaged, something that's a little more deliberate as far as the testing process, and spread that out. I honestly think in the first 12 months, we did what another free-to-play game would probably do in 2 to 3 years. And again, that's only ourselves that made that decision. But in hindsight, I think that was a mistake, because it shortened the life cycle of that content, and the community had an expectation that we couldn't maintain.
Okay. But do you think now that there could be a danger of going too far in the opposite direction, maybe not in terms of the content, but schedule packages for bug fixes and small like UI things? Like I read somewhere in chat, a lot of the player base would be more happy. We've got a lot of guns in the game. There's a lot of different variables you can play with. There's, like you said, there's enough to have a very fun experience, but a lot of people would be more happy in just seeing bug fixes and things, more under the hood things to that. Do you think there's a danger in maybe going too far in the opposite direction with this kind of more recent announcement?
I suppose there could be. What's one thing that's the cost of deploying a patch for us is it's just a significant business consideration. So we just kind of look at that, like how much value is delivered in a patch.
Can you explain why that is a big burden to the company? Because most people probably wouldn't understand that.
I wouldn't say it's a burden. I'd say it's a consideration. So again, at this point, there are bugs. I mean, to me, actually, one of the biggest opportunities would be around optimization of the game. For some folks, it runs really well, but it obviously helps everybody. The more machines that can run it, that gives us a bigger group of people that if they like the gameplay, they can play it. So that's an example of something that we'd want to consider. But there still are just deployment costs with literally, as you mentioned, we have a large number of people playing. I mean, the nature of free-to-play is, 90% of the people will never give you any money, and they play. And again, that's our decision to take that model. I'm just kind of sharing the nature. And actually, most free-to-play games, it's more like 97%, and 3% or so is subsidizing everyone. If you look at like a Facebook game or a mobile game, and again, with us, it's a little closer to 90, which 10% that are choosing to invest money is pretty high, very high for a free-to-play game. But that still means the nature of it is you have a lot of folks out there to distribute patches to, so you just have to consider that in the equation. So to your, the other point I'll make is there are definitely annoyances in Tribes Ascend, the friends list not scrolling, and I know some finickiness with the custom servers, and I'd like to clean that stuff up. At the end of the day, though, also, while any game would benefit from bug fixes, I guess we're never exactly satisfied, but we look at the level of the game and feel that it is fairly functional. You know, the fact that we were fortunate enough to get, and I know I don't need to sell to this audience, but just objectively, if you look at the reviews or Metacritic scores or lists, you know, it's hard to say this is a buggy game that was abandoned when it's on the top of those lists. So it is by far not perfect, but it's also not a point where I guess we feel there are critical ASAP emergency bug fixes needed.
All right. I need to bring this up because I'll get lynched if I don't. There were some previous comments you made in interviews. This is going back to November of 2012. And some of the comments you made there was that you don't want to put this thing out and stop providing updates. You want to keep supporting tribes for a long time. You want this to be a big game. Looking at this more as a service where we're always updating the game with not only bug fixes, weapons, maps, instead of delivering mod tools, and we'll get into that shortly. So that was back in November 2012, and clearly that attitude has changed somewhat. Can you maybe give us some insight into why, you know, that there's a change in the position now?
Sure. Yeah. So I think we got asked throughout the development process about mod support and map making support. And in general, I think we were pretty consistent about not ever ruling it out, but also kind of outlining what our priorities were, where we said our number one priority was to try to make what we thought was a fun game the best we can. And that was the most important thing. We think with the community's help, we've done that. You know, the game improved a lot in beta, thanks to suggestions that people gave, but I think, you know, we scored pretty well on that. The second one was to deliver a lot of updates ourselves ahead of giving tools for the community. Again, people will score it differently. We've done 10 very significant patches, added plenty of weapons, probably too many weapons. The game certainly doesn't need any more, and added a fair number of maps. And then we said 3, when those goals were met, basically, we would look at the idea of mod and map making tools, and that's the point that we're at now. So basically, I mean, I would say at this point, given that we know the ongoing content resources from HiRez are going to be slimming down, and given all the feedback from the community that people certainly still care, and the community wants to see the game continue through content, that we are going to look at a path for user-generated mods and maps with Ascend.
Okay. So I guess just to press on that issue once more, I mean, you're saying that your comments about providing the game as a service in terms of content and updates were based on the assumption that there wouldn't be mod support, and you're saying that with a change in that attitude, perhaps your original comments change also.
I'm saying, yeah, our priorities were fun game. We think we've delivered it to a point. Ongoing updates, we delivered a lot of updates, and then we'd look at mod and map support. We're now looking at mod and map support.
Okay. Well,
and just really quickly, I know we are running out of time for the rest of the topics that we have, but I will just, what extent does that have the possibility to go? Obviously, you won't be able to confirm that you're going to have a complete toolkit ready for people in the next month or so or anything like that, but what is the possibility of that going towards? What level of support of that are we talking for map and map mods?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, if you looked at what we've done, you know, obviously there was a late addition of custom servers, then custom flags, then custom physics, but, you know, the goal would be to give the community more flexibility than not, and we'll just have to, you know, we'll have to see how far we can go in that direction.
Okay. So unconfirmed at this point as to what level. Now will, I assume, be in-game kind of stuff, or would it be a separate, separate release? Or I don't know how to word it.
I think, you know, the goal would be the ability for basically user-managed servers, still with some authentication by HiRez to make sure that people basically were not stealing the game.
Sure.
And again, we'll just have to see what's possible. This is been talked about for a while, but it's bubbled up with obviously the passion / rage that people have expressed. But if there's a desire to for the community to help with content, then we want to work together and make that happen. Details still TBD, but that's the idea.
Well, let's dig into that now, because I think everyone's going to want to know a lot. So let's cover the most recent kind of happenings that's happened in the Tribes community, which is what's being called the TASDK, that's been built up by Altimor and I assume friends. What's your stance on what they've been able to do in terms of modifying the client and enabling it to use maps that have been generated with a sort of particular version of the Unreal map editor?
Yeah, so I won't be able to comment in too much detail on it. I know it's been in the works for a while. I need to get more up to speed on the specifics. Again, I think everyone on the Tribes team appreciates where it comes from. Sean, Scott, others on the Tribes team, they come from a mod background, so everyone understands that desire and everyone appreciates the initiative. I don't know enough about the implementation to know, and again, obviously he's kind of working off of a gated system today, so I don't know how much of the intent is around supporting mods and map making only, versus stealing, I'll say, So we can't, my lawyers, we're not going to be able to condone anything that basically is stealing content, but I'm open to having further discussions if it gives a path for user content and still preserves the high-res business model.
Okay, so I mean, at the moment with what they're doing, is that a risky activity for these people to be involved in? Well, if you do feel that it is stealing, is this something that you will look to punish?
I don't know. Like I said, Doc, I have to get with Adam and understand more of what's going on. I think you can imagine if there's stealing of the assets, that's not something that we can condone. I'll just put it that way.
Okay. Well, then tell us about the path forward. Like, what would be the next steps in making this a reality, and what kind of time frame would we be looking that we could have something that the user base could participate in?
Yeah, like you said, I certainly, it's not something that is weeks away. I think just to set expectations, this is months away. But it's a fairly recent development, as you can imagine. It's a pretty significant development for us, and we've got to do more scoping before I would want to set any expectation. Right now, I can confirm that it's something that we want to do, and that's really all the detail I can say at this point.
Can I just jump in with one point?
Go for it. Yes.
I think I'm agreeing with you on this one, Yosso.
Absolutely great. If so, you've got this kind of period of time in which you need to obviously design and develop how you're going to do the implementation. How updated are we going to be kept as a community during that time? Because that's what we care about. If you come on here and you say, you effectively said earlier that there may be up to kind of 6 months during which there's not much dev time for this. But if during that time you're doing design, you're doing documentation, you're doing implementation, and you're looking at these things, how are we going to be kept up to date, and how often are we going to be kept up to date? Because if we can get a blog post every 3 days, once a week, that's the kind of timescale that we need as a community to really feel like we're being paid attention to. Is that something that you guys could commit to?
I can't commit to any at this point any degree of when it's going to be done. I can commit to that the dev blog will be an appropriate reflection of what's being done, as it actually has been since we've started. There just hasn't been a lot going on over the past few months other than Kate's map. But since we started the dev blog, we've basically kept it up to date with the activity, and that's really the main commitment I can make.
So, I mean, you can probably imagine that if 3 weeks from now there was no post on the dev block, people might be pretty upset given what you've told us just now, though.
Yeah, I understand. And so, I can, if 3 weeks there's no update, then, I'll at least post something, saying why there's no update.
Okay, yeah, I think that's part of maybe a flaw. I mean, I loved the whole transparency update, and when the dev blog was being updated, obviously that's great as a Tribes player to see, and I think it's also a good system. But I think one of the flaws with it, and why some people kind of like lost faith in it was the fact that if there wasn't going anything on, they kind of expected to know that there wasn't going anything on, if that makes any sense. So people were kind of like, oh, is there? It was just the unknowing of, is there going to be updates, or has it been dropped by this point? So I know it must be difficult to kind of update and say, no, we're not doing anything particular at this point. It's just I feel that that's why a lot of people maybe felt quite unhappy about how it was being run, or unhappy with the development at the time, because you go however long without getting any word, and it can become frustrating for some people. So yeah, I guess that's just one of the points I wanted to make about. I mean, I'm fully backing the dev blog, obviously, but I think that was what some people took problem with it with. Makes sense. I understand. Again, we maybe overcompensated with the Reddit post, but there's also that flip side of sometimes those updates can be exaggerated, as again I think that was, but I understand. Sure. Okay.
All right. I'm not sure how much more we can push on this one, to be honest. So, I mean, to summarize, at the moment, you guys are looking at ways that you can enable user-generated content. You're hoping to work with the community in that. I mean, is Altimor someone that you want to work with? Are you going to reach out to him specifically, given the work he's done so far?
I'm open to reaching out to anyone who is not, actively trying to destroy our business model or have cheats in the game. So I know that when I was younger, I was kind of a hacker, and sometimes the brightest minds gravitate to that. But we are also running a business, and we want to make sure the community stays positive. So I don't know. I'm not calling anyone out. I'm just saying anyone who wants to support user-generated content, and that's the agenda, and not bring down HiRez, then I will extend a hand and try to build something together.
So I've got a message from Altimor. He wants to know if you can elaborate on what you mean by stealing assets. Like, what kind of do you feel is acceptable behavior, and what is unacceptable behavior in terms of what they're doing in terms of modding, modifications, creating maps?
The only thing would be there's probably a few examples. If, for instance, I would go to a server and completely bypass HiRez authentication and have a pocket full of gold, that would be fun for me. But that would be obviously stealing that content, because HiRez is not allowed to monetize it. Versus maps, which we don't monetize anyway. We've released every map for free. And that would be what we continue to do, and we would assume that there's no monetization of the user-generated maps. So that's a very easy black and white example in my mind. There's probably, maybe there's some other shades of gray, but that's a pretty clear line right there.
Sure.
Okay.
I think, yeah, an important note to make is, I guess, that's a very important note to make in that it's not the using of necessarily art assets or maps or anything like that. It's literally trying to advance yourself in the game or making the experience worse for other people and taking potential money or whatever away from HiRez. And I think, I'm not going to speak for anyone in particular because I'm not include with the people doing modding. I have no idea about modding myself. But I think that the general outlook on it is just the want of, wanting to play more maps. I don't think that it's a very small minority of people going in and trying to make the experience worse for people or something like that. So I think that's generally good news to hear that.
That's what I think. It's not, around the art, and we've taken a stance, for instance, where we actually have allowed a lot of people to monetize things like YouTube videos where they're using game footage, and some people have done pretty well with that. And in general, we've tried to allow those things to happen where people are adding value on top of the basic tribes content. But yeah, if they're working around the monetization system, that's what I'm talking about. Okay,
so it's anything that would subvert people gaining access to content that they couldn't otherwise access without paying for it, essentially.
That's right.
Okay, well that makes a lot of sense.
So can we take the inverse of that then, which is if these mods and these maybe not maps, but say weapon ideas, those kind of things, assets that the community could develop potentially with this new openness, would they be put back into the TA kind of ecosystem to be sold out to people? So could modders in that sense create items that you guys would then take on and sell through your store for profit for HiRez?
I think it's a beautiful vision. I think that, you know, Valve has put a lot of money into supporting that sort of workshop, and so it's just again, I like the end goal, but it's not something that I would be comfortable saying we would have in any short term, because I think the amount of work and money that it takes to make that system fraud proof and easy for users is more than we would take on right now.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Sto, do you feel like we should move on to the last topic before we go to some community questions, or have you got more on the mod stuff?
Very short thing. So that, I mean, what people have mentioned there and what Yozo mentioned there was basically what Steam Workshop is. And I'm not really sure how Steam Workshop operates. I mean, maybe someone here can enlighten me how they do that. But as a Steam game, is there any possibility that that would have a way of tying in to use Steam Workshop, or is it? I have no understanding of this. So.
Yeah, it's a separate set of SDK through Steamworks, and a pretty significant effort. And it would then require the use of Steam, which we've actually tried not to do. Again, some people might like that, some people might not, but friend system, etc., other systems, voice chat, we have not incorporated because we don't want to force people in the Steam ecosystem, and that would, for good or for bad, that would do that, and it would still be a lot of work.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I'm totally cool to move on, Doc.
Yeah, I don't want to dwell on this one because I think it's already been answered many times, but just for the sake of completeness, recently there's been some controversy with the HiRez patch service. People have been upset believing that it is doing background scans when there is not a HiRez product running, in other words, SMITE, Global Agenda, or Tribes, of course. Can you give us a final word on that? Is it breaking the EULA?
Final word is we do not scan when our game is not running, period.
Okay, and how would you respond to the people that have put up videos and stuff trying to demonstrate that they feel that's not the case?
That it's not the case, you know, we'd have to look at videos. I mean, there's a lot of noise out there. I had the guy responsible double check the code today. You know, I'll say, you know, if someone has proof, then I don't, you know, there's always the chance of a bug, I suppose. I won't rule out the impossible, but I can say that the design was not to do that, that the code review verified that this morning. And yeah, so if people have videos, just because there's a late notification of a ban, that there may be other reasons from that, including just latency of the server detecting it and notifying the client. So that doesn't necessarily imply the scan. So I can just tell you what the intent of the anti-cheat is and what the code review confirmed, which is to scan only when HiRez games are playing. Now I'll also say, regarding the whole EULA thing, other companies take actually a much more aggressive stance, and our EULA is more aggressive than that. Our EULA does give HiRez the permission to scan more broadly, and the user basically says, I'm not going to use cheats. And if I compare it to Valve, the Valve anti-cheat system says you'll have no blacklisted software anywhere installed on your server when you connect, whether it's running or not. And that's their stated policy. So the precedent is pretty there because cheating is a big issue in online games, and we're committed to try to keep the servers as clean as we can. But that's what the current program does, is it scans when our games are running.
All right, like I said, I don't want to dwell on that because I think there's more pressing things that we can cover. And Yazo, I'm going to kick it over to you. You sort of drafted some of the community questions that came from the Reddit thread. Why don't we start hitting on some of them?
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm going to have to pick through a few of these because obviously you know, we've covered a lot of ground. But I'm just going to start at the top, and if you guys want to highlight in the document any questions that you feel are kind of significant and throw them out. But I guess the first question we can ask is from Kukook on Reddit, and you know, his first question is: do you feel that you guys have met the criteria you set yourselves when you set out to make a tribes game and engaging the tribes community? And kind of on top of that as well, to kind of expedite your answer, maybe is it a good thing to have such a kind of passionate fan base? Is it intimidating, and how much of a challenge is it to interact with us?
Just look at chat.
Yeah.
So it was, do we think, you know, kind of how satisfied are we with tribes and what are the challenges with dealing with the community?
Yeah. And how moving on? I mean, obviously, we're all looking to the future now. We're not looking for what's going to have changed in the past 6 months. We're looking for what's going to change in the next 6 months. So, what can change in terms of how HiRez interact with you and how HiRez interact with us and how we interact with HiRez to make sure that what started today, this conversation that started today, is continued. You know, if not day to day, then certainly week to week.
So. When we bought the franchise, we talked with some of the developers of the prior Tribes games, and 2 developers from Tribes 2, I won't give away their names, they were congratulating us and kind of sharing war stories, and they said, let me tell you something about interacting with the Tribes community. We all, like, you know, listened for the words of wisdom. He said, don't. Like, what? He's like, just don't. You can't win. There's no way to win. So that was kind of our introduction to the Tribes community. That was at PAX.
You didn't listen to him, did you?
I guess it depends who you talk to, whether we listened or not. We, you know, we've tried to engage with the community, but it's a tough bunch. So, you know, I think that the Tribes vets have very high expectations. The game has been made better through their interaction, but you know, it's no surprise it's pretty harsh. And I think that, you know, some of the statements, again, will acknowledge that Tribes is not perfect, but it's a pretty damn good game. I mean, at the end of the day, when you make a top 10 shooter list for PC Gamer, when you're the top rated free-to-play game that's ever been released, it's not a bad game. And so, you know, some of the hate is very undeserved. But it's not perfect, and I know it doesn't meet everyone's expectations. To be honest, I think it would have been pretty tough to meet everyone's expectations because the community is very united on some things, but not everything. So, top 10 shooters, not last year, Egypt, but of all time.
Okay, great. Kind of leading on from that, Lumberjack asked a pretty good question, which is, do you have a response as to why you chose to do things the way you did? And if you could go back now, what would you do differently? Or would you do anything differently? Would TA be the same as it is? So if you had...
Maybe you're looking forward to TA2, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So what would we do differently?
Yeah.
Basically,
during the development phase, and then obviously, so you've already said that you would have spaced out patches at the start earlier, certainly content patches. But would you have developed it differently? Would you have looked to get modding in earlier? That kind of thing.
I think the top things would have been spacing out the content differently. I think not having a ranked system in the game really hurt us. We were positioning the game as a competitive game and as an esport. And there was casual play, and there was organized esport play and tournaments, but the feeder system to identify good players and match them with teams was not strong in the game. So it required a lot of, you know, going to other websites. Appreciate the work that community sites, Game Shrine, you know, the NA Tribes scene, Wilderzone most recently. I mean, those were filling in gaps that really should have been in the game. So I think that ranked feeder system was a miss. Demos was obviously a big, certainly a PR checkbox item. I know I think it was important because without it, people lost faith that we were committed to the game. I actually think the community stepped in as far as production values for tournaments and helped filled in for that as well. So those would probably be my items. I know other people have their list that has maybe more to do with physics, but if you're personally asking me what 3 things would have helped, then it would have been those 3.
Something I just want to really quickly tie in is just, I suppose it covers the last 2 questions, and it was about the Tribes Ascend community. And I mean, we all know that at the best of times it can be kind of difficult to deal with some people, but I think it's worth mentioning, this is less of a question I guess, but I think it's still worth mentioning that I think the Tribes community has also done really amazing things with the tools that has been available. I mean, you look at websites like you just mentioned, NA Tribes and Game Shrine, and there's been very large community efforts towards this kind of stuff, and I think it is a community that is, and not saying you guys haven't done this, because obviously you have a lot of points, but I would definitely say that the Tribes Ascend community has also been very good community in making things happen and organising tournaments and ladders and getting a lot of stuff done. And I suppose that kind of ties in with just it would have been nice at certain points to have better tools for people to use and get themselves further within it. But I do think that we can't write off the Tribes community for they can be very good, but they can be like a bit rowdy. Through love of the game, I think it is as well.
I would have hired APC earlier too.
Yeah.
I'd like to throw in a question that came from Mike Axe too, which says that if when you finish this sort of period of very high development in SMITE, will there be plans to reallocate resources back into TA, or is it more likely that they'll move on to other things?
So again, I think we kind of talked about this, but if we introduce map and mod making into the game, that obviously gives a path for user-generated content. And those features that I mentioned, ranked and demo, they're important. I think architecturally, there's always a possibility we'd go back to it, but I think the goal would be more to put Tribes Ascend on a self-sustaining path with user-generated content, and we would see that as leaving it in a good state where it could have a long life.
Yozo, back to you.
Yeah, so I got asked a question from everybody's favorite Blitz. It seemed that Tribes had a great mainstream exposure and tons of hype early on release. What did you feel was done to capitalize on this hype, and do you think that you did enough?
That's always a question, I guess. We ask ourselves, do you need to make more of a big bang, or do you need to have slower growth over time? And our idea on that is that the best multiplayer games grow through word of mouth, and then we try to use our power to basically amplify the word of mouth. So very specifically, before we released, we looked at 2 metrics, basically, 2 data points. We looked at what do we think our critical release scores are going to be for the game, because the way the industry works, even with an ongoing updates, you get your review score and that sticks with you for all time. Even if a magazine outlet like PC Gamer comes back and does a re-review, Metacritic, which is kind of the gold standard, for good or bad, doesn't ever update their reviews. So whenever you release, you're going to live with that. That's your permanent record. So we wanted to make sure that we had no crystal ball, but we wanted to do our best guesses on where that review score would be. And then the other thing that we looked at was, as you guys remember, we did a lot of surveys. And our top question was always, would you refer a friend to the game on like a 0 to 10 scale? And we did a lot of work in beta, and we said we also weren't going to release until we were in a very positive category there. And both of those things drove when we released, because our refer a friend score was very, very high. We thought we'd have high review scores. Both of those things turned out to be true. In retrospect, we should have waited even longer to release, I think. We were growing fine in beta. I think the game improved throughout, so there was really, even though we had a long beta process, the game would have had even more polish. So I don't think it would have made a huge difference, but we could have released a little bit later. So that's a lesson that we've learned from. But as far as capitalizing, we got really good press coverage when we released. We got great community coverage. You know, the Shazbot memes were everywhere. I think we got pretty good hype. So.
Cool. Well, a question that leads on from that comes from IDK Holmes, which was kind of related to the way that Smite's still in beta at the moment. Have you seen success with the payment model in Smite? And yeah, okay, everybody drink, blah, 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 talking about Smite. But by making the one-time purchase available while it's still in beta so early, do you think that that's a model that you'll continue to use? Has that shown you, has that been rewarding to you? And do you think TA has been a large enough success business-wise and perhaps has taught you enough lessons as a company in order to warrant another Tribes game later on? So kind of two questions there, I guess.
So I think, you know, things that we did late in the process with Tribes, in addition to all the gameplay changes, we halved the XP costs, and then we obviously introduced the single purchase option. And both of those were good, I think. I think they were good for us. They were good for the industry. It kind of set, I don't think any other free-to-play game had done this that I'm aware of or has done it since, of being free, but also giving a fairly reasonable price to get all the content. And that got a lot of press, and I think set a standard for other free-to-play games. And we're doing the same thing in Smite. So I think that was good, and it did generate some revenue, and it let people buy it like a single purchase game, which we had also gotten community requests for. So your question, you had some question about the other game, that, but I don't remember it, other than I'll type it in chat so people have to drink.
It's just about whether you feel that the payment model being applied to Smite so early has been beneficial to Smite, and you know, I mean, the one-time payment, the Game of the Year edition, the one-time payment model is, I agree, it's fantastic in the free-to-play market. It's kind of, yeah, it does challenge the market in terms of what's out there, and you're right, I've not seen another free-to-play game do it. Has that benefited Smite? Is that something that you're going to continue to do with other games later on, do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's worked very well so far, and you know, with every new year, we have to look at the competitive pressures that are out there, right? I mean, used to be everyone, you know, would put a very high price tag on games, and Steam kind of trained people to wait for discounts, and then free-to-plays come out, so the rules are always changing. But at the end of the day, again, people can agree or disagree, but we try to say, based on people, what they spent, would they tell their friends they got good value in the game, and the single purchase helps with that in Tribes as well as other games.
I'd like to touch on one that kind of related to one of M-Star's questions, which was, do the guys in HiRez, do you take much interest in the competitive scene? Do you watch matches at work? Do you rooting for the teams? Like, how much interest is there in the competitive scene within the dev community, or the dev team, I should say?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we balance it, you know, with working on the games, which oftentimes just even find time to play the games is hard when we're working on them. But I think, you know, any of the players that, particularly the LAN events, you know, we tried to interact with the players, we tried to get to know people. We're personally, the whole idea of positioning it as an esport was just the idea that it fits the type of games that a lot of people here enjoy playing, including HiRez, who's the top guy. He just enjoys playing games, not professionally competitively, but you know, to improve his skill. So that's the type of games that we always are focused on. So recently, again, I'm always impressed by Dodge Pong's production skills and by what the community does. So recently, I haven't watched as much, you know, as I'd like, but from time to time, we definitely watch.
So we got a question here. A couple of questions that's been asked, or a question that's been asked multiple times in chat and on Reddit as well, was giving you guys money. Essentially, we want to give you money for you to develop SMITE. I'm done.
Oh, see ya. You're gone.
Damn, my shill position has been shredded.
Wow.
We want to give you money to develop tribes. And is there any way that you would consider something like a Kickstarter, or some way that we could donate, Jesus, the chat, to HiRez specifically to say this is money we want to give you for TA. It's a kind of bizarre concept, but it's been asked multiple times. Yeah, I suck. Well done.
The HiRez tip jar, basically.
We're going to bribe you to make more tribes, kind of. Yeah, essentially. Either a Kickstarter or some other form, or something that you could put into the game that would allow us to give you money.
I mean, the thing is, I don't think the majority of the community would want more weapons at this point. My sense is that, again, people that enjoy the game as is want maps and want some more degree of user control through mod sort of settings, and that's what we're talking about doing. On the tutorials, I mean, I know that comes up again. I'm seeing it in chat. I don't really think that's the fix. I know that comes up a lot, but better servers, yeah, I understand the server one.
What about like trying to alleviate the deployment costs you're talking about?
For example, you know, the maps that Kate are working on, you were saying earlier that there's still a possibility that those won't even come out in the next 6 months, due to, you know, the large patch costs to patch them out to people. So what if there, was some sort of, it sounds really strange. It's a really weird way of explaining like a thing, but it's like a Kickstarter or whatever to help alleviate those costs, or maybe premium maps, or although I suppose that's something you don't want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate the sentiment, but the headline from that one, and we get accused of cash grabs all the time, and we're not very good at cash grabs. I don't think that if that's our intent, we're really bad at it. Because again, the game is not a loser of money, but I certainly think compared to other free-to-play games, milking people out of cash is not what we're about, and that's not what it looks like. And I would honestly have concerns that something like a Kickstarter or that, even though I got that it's coming from a good place, would be seen by people as a cash grab.
Well, if we did it in secret. I mean, just quickly talking on the tutorials thing. So people are very in favor of, like, putting in tutorials. Or wait, okay. Oh, I just got muted, but it was on something else. Like, people talk about tutorials still quite a lot, and I think you kind of hinted at that wasn't something you'd definitely look into now. As the player base, as you said earlier, has plateaued a bit, and we're not getting in, or you're not getting in too many new players, so the tutorial will be lost on most people. But would you say that that's something, better tutorial systems and better practice systems for people to ease into the game a bit further, like people first tribes game or something like that? Is that something you'd maybe put more time into, going back, or maybe in a possibility of Tribes Ascend 2?
It's a possibility. If there was a silver bullet, whether it was easy or hard, that would convert more first-time users to be interested enough to do the work that it takes to get good at tribes, then we would have done it. People might have great ideas. I can compare it to the other games that we have. I mean, specifically the S word, where, I mean, we just have an interesting comparison where from closed beta through the development life cycle, basically our marketing approach was the same number of money. The degree of tutorial support was the same. As tutorial, Kate made tutorials. Tutorial that is okay, but not great. and a game that's not that forgiving. Neither game is that forgiving. A MOBA is not that forgiving. Tribes is not that forgiving. I'm just telling you that you can blame HiRez and blame the community. You could just say it's the state of the gaming industry. Right now, we just see people sticking with SMITE in particular at a much higher percentage than Tribes, and I don't think a tutorial is going to change that.
Sorry,
go. No, you're right.
So sorry, I mean, I don't know if you were talking about necessarily Tribes Ascend or a possibility of TA2 if that does happen for the newer players. So you're saying that the tutorial wouldn't matter as much.
I don't know. Do you guys chat and people, you know, and Charlie and James? I mean, do you guys like playing game tutorials? Has there been a game tutorial that you thought was really well done?
Ooh.
When I watch my kid play any game, he hates the tutorial, you know, and wants to get right into the game. And in talking with other devs, I know that a lot of folks have done tests where they actually had folks skip the tutorial and see better user movement to the next level versus when they had the tutorial. So,
well, rather than a playable tutorial, how about some kind of video that played automatic first run that introduced the concept of a Pathfinder as a capper, an infiltrator as a complete, you know, heavy offense, light offense, defense strategy. You know, a kind of introduction to CTF rather than quick match TDM. Oh, okay, I'm flying around with jetpack. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's where part of the problem maybe lies for some people, is that they'd see people playing in public games and they'd be like, well, you're not contributing to the objective of this game. Maybe it's because you don't understand exactly what your role is. Maybe not a tutorial, but a guideline or something like that. For CTF in particular is one I maybe would think of.
Yeah, sorry, I'm listening to you and trying to look at
no, it's fine.
Chat at the same time. Yeah, I mean, there's some comments, I missed a lot of them, but I mean, there are a lot of community-generated tutorials on how to ski, how to cap, guide to competitive players. You know, maybe the idea of putting that more in people's face in the game would benefit it. But if we thought that that would make a big difference, we would have done that a long time ago. At the end of the day, I think that Tribes is unique and it's different from other games out there. People, one way or another, need to be motivated to play. The best way that that happens is through a friend telling them that it's good. If anything, things like party system came a bit late in Tribes, and again, it would benefit from a better system for playing, you know, with your friends. I think that's what helps in an online game that's hard, in my personal opinion. But
okay,
I know we're pushing time here, Todd. I mean, how many more questions do you think we have?
Let's go till, yeah, we got 10 more minutes.
All right, cool. I'd like to go back sort of up. We did skip one section, which was sort of the monetization model you guys used in Tribes Ascend. I don't know if you saw it, but TotalBiscuit released a video today commenting on the happenings recently, and some of the comments that he made about the mistakes that perhaps he felt you made was about the financial model, the monetization model, where you were selling guns for like quite expensive by microtransaction standards, $7 or $8 a piece. Do you think that hurt? And going forward, would you change your monetization model for, say, TA2?
Do I think that hurt? I think more cosmetic options are good. So, you know, there was discussion of jetpack trails and things like that. And so no one tends to object to cosmetics. And having more of those is a good way to go, and no one's going to complain about those. On the guns, you know, I think it was an okay design for monetization. I mean, at the end of the day, a studio just has to pick, if they're doing free-to-play, they have to pick that they're going to go with a whale model, which again means that you have maybe 2 or 3% of your players paying an incredible amount of money to subsidize it, or you go with a little more of a spread-out model where, again, you maybe have close to 10% and they're paying a little less. and we had a model, particularly with the single packet, the single buy, that's a little more the second. So there's actually, I know...
But that came quite late, the Game of the Year edition. In the start, do you feel that the microtransactions were overpriced?
They may have been, but I don't think that would make a huge difference either way.
Okay.
I think that people that enjoyed the game play, you know, the feel of the game, generally invested either their time or their money. I don't think that too many people, that was the thing that turned them away.
I mean, for example, for me, I've bought in-game gold quite a few times. I've been playing for quite a long time, but all of that has only gone to the stuff that I can't unlock with XP, like the cosmetic stuff for me. And I think, to me, that was generally down to just if I wanted to buy a single gun. I think it did go down, didn't it? Because experience, it went down, and then gold, it went down as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, especially at the start, I think it was due to just, I thought it was a bit pricey for that, to something that I could work towards unlocking through playing naturally, whereas with the cosmetic stuff, all of my gold has since gone to that, so that was, I suppose that's just an example of maybe the cosmetic stuff. I felt fine paying that, especially, as you said, this is a very fun game, and you know, you get such good reviews of, you know, was this worth your money, and or lack of money or time or whatever, depending on they spent money in game. But I definitely got that out, got my time out of it, and got my value out of it. So I was fully prepared to put money forward to it for stuff like that. But for guns and stuff, it seemed to be more, I would just naturally unlock them.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think every gun was OP that someone else had, I guess, maybe.
Yeah.
Some people kind of see that and then they realize, oh, maybe that person was just a bit better than me.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think your point that there's at least a group that wants to support the studio, even if it was through a separate project in order to get more content, that points out, obviously, that there's pricing aside, the game would benefit from more things from people to spend money on it, if I heard you right. I mean, you're basically saying there's a group that would support the game monetarily if it helped with more content.
Yeah, that was raised in both chat today and in Reddit previously. So that's,
yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yep, I understand that.
I think we've lost Twitch chat, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I think we have lost Twitch chat as well. So guys, if you got questions,
if
then
you tweet,
text them to me on 079 2040 1337, and I will not respond or ever say my phone number on a live stream again.
If you do generally want to ask questions, then tweet at QuickDrawTV.
Well, we have plenty more here. I mean,
Okay,
Nelson, do you want to move on to another one?
Yeah, I mean, we've probably only got time for maybe two more questions, and there's two kind of rounding up questions that I'd like to ask. So the two that I've highlighted, Doc, if you've got any others that you'd want to ask before those, then you better do them now.
I can't see, but go on then.
Okay, so the first one is probably going to be fairly easy for you to answer, Todd. Looking back at Tribes Ascend so far, do you think that it's been a success?
So a success, so let's just look at it a couple different ways, I guess. So from an industry standpoint, I think yes, and again, I'll just point to the reviews and the fact that we think it has established a kind of a new way to do free-to-play, and whether you like it or not, we think there's going to be a lot more free-to-play games in the future. Do you want them to be more like Farmville, or do you want them to be more like Tribes? So from an industry standpoint, we think we've made a mark on the industry as far as being a shooter and being a free-to-play game that isn't too exploitive. You may disagree, but that's our thought. So yes, from an industry standpoint. From a commercial standpoint, it didn't lose money. I know that, again, you know, people may think HiRez could have done it differently, but most games don't see the light of day. And then of the games that actually get published, 90% of them lose money. You might see that as 80% in some areas. So that's just the nature of the industry. It's a hit-driven business. If you look at recent fast shooters, the sequel to the Quake series, the sequel to the Unreal series, Unreal 3, things that are in the same category as Tribes, they did not do well commercially. They had limited success critically, And if you're just putting it in the big genre of very fast shooters, kind of old school style versus more military, Tribes Ascend, we think, made the Tribes brand relevant again and did well critically, and was slightly profitable. Not a growth vehicle for the studio, but didn't lose money when 90% of the games that get made lose money. And then, was it successful from a player standpoint? I think there's two categories of players. There's new players. I think a lot of players, again, got their value out of it. More people played Ascend than played all the other Tribes games put together collectively, and I think most of them had a good experience. Most of them will say, that was positive. Whatever I paid, I got my fun out. Tribes Vets, again, I certainly don't think that you poll the Tribes Vets and they're satisfied with Ascend. So that's my scorecard.
Cool. Okay. There's actually one question that just came up in chat that I really should put to you. Mods and user content solves nothing without bug fixes, and especially without stable servers. If the community comes up with a prioritized list of bug fixes and small changes we want, would that help you guys in the process of minimizing the project size necessary to bring out a small patch?
Prioritization from the users is always very helpful. It's easier said than done. No one person speaks for the community. APC works with a lot of folks. I can certainly give him that challenge to try to work and get a list that has consensus.
I think making work for APC is a good idea. Yeah, we should do that.
So yeah, I mean, that would be, I can't make any commitment on the schedule, but that would be helpful information to the studio if there really was that much agreement around it.
Okay, and
what's
finally,
the likelihood of it being done?
Depends on what's on the list, honestly. I mean, there's priority, and then there's kind of low, medium, high of difficulty, and without knowing what's on the list, I couldn't say.
Okay.
Okay, I think this is the final, and this is the big question for me, which is how can we rebuild the trust between HiRez and the community, the Tribes community as a whole? Where do we go from here? So we spoke about a dev blog, and I think we've kind of really expressed as a community we're going to, if not need, then desperately want updates as often as humanly possible, even if that update only says, hey guys, we couldn't do anything on TA this week. We were, inundated with blah, blah, blah. How can we, as a community, rebuild trust towards you guys so you don't see us as so aggressive, so full of mistrust or whatever, and equally the other way around as well? So how do we progress from here, really?
Like I said, I can commit to keeping folks informed on the dev blog. And giving updates on we're talking about, I appreciate the bug fix list, and we will definitely look at that. Kate's maps, she's, again, that has been slow progress, but she has updated folks, and she's been, she hops on this show a lot, and she's, I think, been great as far as interacting with the community from my perspective. And the one thing that, the one specific thing that we're talking about in the near term is what the path would look like around supporting mods and map making, which we will keep you updated on. Again, it's a very fresh idea, so sorry I don't have more specifics other than the intent to progress it. Beyond that, I don't know. Come see us at shows. Everything's is a lot more friendly in person. On Reddit, there's people that want to take a crap on my lawn, and I got in a bill posted at the door, kind of behind bulletproof glass here, but in person I've never had a bad experience. I always have a great time interacting with folks, even if they disagree with the design choice. It's always good. It's just something about the internet, I guess.
Yeah, as soon as you give someone an anonymity to any degree, yeah. I have one more kind of big question, but won't take too much longer, and then I'm all questioned out. And it pretty much just leads to Tribes Ascend 2, TA2. It's been mentioned before. I don't think anything's been ever confirmed on it. What's the general thoughts on it from HiRez about a possible Tribes Ascend 2?
So I definitely, it is not my intent to communicate any confirmation of Tribes Ascend 2.
Of course.
So I hope, I hope the takeaway from this is we've heard your feedback around mods and map making, and we want to work together around that goal. That's really the next thing for us, Tribes. My comment about Tribes Ascend 2 was really setting expectations that beyond mods and map making, we don't see any really big, like this is the killer feature, or these are the big next weapon set that we would do as a studio, and that we still really like the franchise. I know a lot of people would love, or not a lot, but at least, 10 people on Reddit want us to give up the franchise or move it on or think that we've moved on, and that's not the case. I mean, there's a lot of potential in the Tribes franchise long term, and so that's how we feel about it.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. All right, well, I know we've run a bit over time, Todd, so I want to thank you very much for sticking with us, and I want to give you just some time right at the end here. If you have any final thoughts, any comments or things you'd like to say, this time is yours.
Okay, well, thanks for hosting me. I appreciate what you guys have been doing. What is this, episode 52, I guess?
It is indeed, yep.
That's pretty impressive, and I thank you guys for keeping it positive. We'll try to stay transparent. Even I hope people appreciate the candor. We were not trying to insult the brand of Tribes. We were trying to just be candid with where things stood. And I'm personally excited about a path for user-generated content. If we're not adding maps, then it's good to have a way to have the game continue. So
cool.
Okay, so thanks.
Yozo, Stowe, any final thoughts from you guys?
Yozo, I'll let you go first.
Oh, my only thought, Todd, is, to you personally, thanks for making the game. Please stay transparent, not just with TA, with everything that you make. As a games company, there is nothing more important than you can do than talk to us and let us talk to you. It's so important for your image, and your image is obviously important from you from a business standpoint. But to us as gamers, we need that conversation. So that's what I'll leave it on, I guess. Yep,
excellent. And we will have a form of a Tribes tournament at QuakeCon, and just for the folks that are on the floor. This isn't like esports professional teams. It's just more exposure for the game. We've been tight with the QuakeCon guys for a while. I think this is like the 5th year, or I don't know, since practically the beginning, ever since we were the first non-id exhibitor there, and we've been there every year since. And we will be there if a lot of people are going from Tribes. Then I'll probably change my schedule and personally be there. So shoot me an email or hit me up on Twitter or whatever if you're going to be there. And then, like I said, a lot of it's just the best interaction is face to face. So.
Stowe?
Okay.
Todd, just want to say thanks so much for coming on the show, and I think it takes a lot of courage to come forward to the Tribes scene sometimes, especially in times of particular outrage or disquiet or whatever you want to call it. So I really do appreciate you coming on. It's been really great. So thank you for that. And I think I'm still really enjoying Tribes, playing it every weekday now anyway. So it's it's still fun, and I urge people to stick with it when they can. So thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for keeping it constructive. Thanks for the work ahead of time gathering questions from the community, and we'll see you online or at QuakeCon.
Cool. Well, that's going to do it from us. I just want to reiterate everything that everyone said. Thank you, Todd, for making the time for us, particularly that we went over time. Chat, I hope we covered as many questions from you as we could, particularly from the Reddit thread, but obviously there is a constrained amount of time. So hopefully you're all satisfied with all the information we were able to get out. Todd, all I can say is we're super excited for all of the mod support that you guys are looking into, and we'll be following it with extremely keen eyes. Again, just once more, thank you very much for making the time for us. And yeah, we we'll be watching.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right.
All right.
Cheers, Todd.
That'll do it for us, guys. We'll see you around.